President Yang had also fallen victim to the Cultural Revolution. Like Deng, he and his family were accused of taking the capitalist road and enriching themselves. They had been beaten and paraded through the streets and removed from power. Both Deng and Yang had learned from history. Both knew their hold on power could be taken away by the students with the backing of the Chinese people. It was the Cultural Revolution all over again, with the exception that students were demanding freedom and democracy, whereas in the Cultural Revolution they supported Mao's madness and a cruel dictatorship which crushed the people in their hopes. Deng felt personally threatened. He knew there were more and more demonstrations every day throughout China, demonstrations which could remove him from power, like the Cultural Revolution. Student protests and demands for democracy had erupted in over 116 cities, with demonstrators numbering more than 10,000 in Shanghai, Tianjin, Harbin, Changchun, and on and on and on. Deng felt that the PLA should attack the students in Beijing and elsewhere in the country to suppress the turmoil once and for all. The student democracy movement would be suppressed, and all those who had supported them would be punished, including Zhao Ziyang, who soon would be placed under arrest. For the leaders of China, power is maintained not through democracy or the will of the people, but through bullets and guns. Power in politics is all about force, and force is the only reliable way to maintain their monopoly on power. Deng had given Li the authority to crush the democracy movement. That evening, Li Peng spoke to the nation and declared martial law. The leaders of China would use force to terrorize the people into submission and to maintain their power. The student democracy movement would be put down by force. Li Peng also used the loudspeaker system of Tiananmen Square to announce martial law and warning of resolute and forceful measures to curb the turmoil and restore order. It was a declaration of war. He was calling in the army to crush the student movement. On May 20th, the People's Liberation Army was authorized to clear the streets. Upon hearing the news, students began to shout, "Li Peng step down," and "Long live Zhao Ziyang." The following day, the hunger strike would end, but as Zhao had warned, it was too late. Students and the citizens of Beijing reacted to Li Peng's martial law declaration with a mixture of fear, shock, terror, disbelief, and rage. "Hooligan government," they began to shout. "Kill Li Peng. We will fight to the end." Slogans and posters began appearing opposing martial law. Students and citizens were chanting, "Down with Li Peng, down with Yang, down with Deng." The last time the People's Liberation Army entered Beijing was in 1949 and was welcomed by the people as liberators. There was a saying in China, "The army was fish, the people like water. The army cannot live without water." That evening, tanks and trucks filled with soldiers began to rumble towards Beijing. Over 22 divisions from 13 PLA armies were sent to enforce martial law. To the astonishment of the dictators of China, over 1 million people took to the streets, setting up roadblocks and barriers, including buses, sewer pipes, and bike racks. In many parts of the city, there were barriers at every intersection. All over the city, hundreds of military trucks were blocked by students, men, women, children, and the aged. The troops were stuck in a sea of people. Parents carrying children on their shoulders stood in front of the convoys, blocking the way. Soldiers were offered tea and cigarettes. They were told that the students were good and patriotic, that the students loved China, and it was the patriotic duty of the soldiers to support them, to support the people. Children, students, and old women pleaded with soldiers not to attack the city.
解放军官兵们，我请求你们，我作为一个学生代表，请求你们拿出你们的正义和勇气，做一个人民的军队、人民的子弟兵，而不要为小撮人所左右，做一小撮人的工具，做中华民族的罪人。
Children pleaded, handed them copies of the People's Daily and the Beijing Daily, which had written articles supporting the students. Soldiers were surprised, even shocked. They had been forbidden to read newspapers, watch TV, or listen to the radio, and they had been told nothing about the demonstrations or the reasons they had been sent to Beijing. Over 1 million people were guarding the streets, and over 100 top army commanders refused to attack unless they received orders in writing from Deng Xiaoping. The people won, and the convoys turned away and left Beijing. Deng was so humiliated, angered, and frightened that he ordered 2 of the top military generals to pay personal visits to every top commander. They were warned, next time, they and their soldiers should obey their orders, or they would be shot. 1 million people marched the next day, calling on Li, Yang, and Deng to resign. At least 319 different schools and universities were represented. And millions had come forward not because of what this or that leader had said, but because they yearned for freedom and democracy and the end of corruption. Students would leave Tiananmen Square only to be replaced by new enthusiastic students from other provinces who were not yet ready to give up. As some students left